Background. Are we going to hear ourselves now? Oh,
sorry.
I was like, did I do something? Nope. I only got one tab open. It's not me.
Sorry,
You're fine. You're good. I like the calming music though, right? Like it's very nice. We did that last time too. And I really enjoyed it. So I was like, we're going to do that again. So hi, good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Coffee Table Talks. We're here today with Shane McCombs, who is the Chief Operating Officer for the Innocent Lives Foundation, which I volunteer for. I am decorated, just so you know. And the ever charismatic Will McCullen with the IT Center of Excellence from PIMA Community College, Tucson, Arizona. Thank you so much, Will, for continuing to put up with my shenanigans.
Oh, it's a lot of fun.
Oh, good. I'm so glad. I'm going to try and keep it that way. Today, we do have a little bit more serious topic at hand. So we want to make sure that everyone is aware who is watching. Careful. There could be some triggering things that are brought up in today's conversation. Since the type of organization that the Innocent Lives Foundation is, they deal with sensitive material to children. There's lots of things. Okay, so I'm gonna.
That's a good way to put it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if you feel like at any time that you are becoming emotionally distressed, please close out, and we don't mind. It's okay. We still love you. We understand. It's totally fine. So, I don't know if anybody else noticed, but I keep putting Chris Roberts in a tutu for the ILF. And then there's also all these other things on the side. It's so fun. It's so fun for me, right? But it's a very serious thing that you guys tackle. And I would love for you to kind of briefly explain that to anyone who might be hanging out this morning that is not aware of what the ILF does.
So at the Innocent Lives Foundation, our goal is there's all these people out on the internet who think they can be anonymous and then hurt children. And that's just not okay. You just can't do that. Just because you think you can stay hidden it's never acceptable. So with our opportunity, the skill sets that we have with the people that we know, the goal is to be able to identify these guys in real life. So you've got a user out there who's harming children in multiple ways. They're hiding behind a moniker or a handle. A lot of times law enforcement doesn't have the bench, the skill set to figure some of this stuff out. The other thing too is they're just so dang busy. They're overwhelmed all the time. And so this gives us the ability to use our skill set to make a positive identification and then turn these guys over to the right law enforcement agencies. Did that make sense to you guys?
It made sense to me.
Okay.
That's fantastic, and definitely puts all of you in the hero category right away.
Well, yeah, I mean, I don't know. To me, the heroes are the people who are supporting us. I mean, because we can't do this work. So yes, we've got the skill set and we've got the team, but we have to run a full organization just like any other business. And that business is a nonprofit. And so literally we would be, 4 people sitting in a basement part-time doing good work versus the 52 people that we have driving this business, making this thing work. And so in all honesty, the heroes are the people who send us funds to operate, because without that, we would be back down to turning in 2 or 3 cases a year, most likely on a part-time basis. And last year we had 156.
Yeah, I was getting ready to say I was like, can you shout out the numbers real quick on last year? Because that was I was really excited to see that and hear that, and definitely bragged about it on Twitter for a couple of days.
Yeah. So the first year, so we're going into we're about to hit our 4-year anniversary, and so our first year and a half or so, we got 9 cases turned in, and we were thrilled. I mean, we were like, here's 9 bad guys who are hurting kids Now they've been handed to law enforcement with a bow around them, and law enforcement can go do their thing and get these guys, stop them from harming kids. And we were just thrilled. Well, the next year we got 86, and then last year we got 156. And so it's not linear, because there will be months where we'll just, everything works, and we'll end up with, a bunch of them turned in. And there will be some months where we're busting our tail and we get one or two. So it's not linear. So hopefully the numbers will continue to climb. But it's just, that's what it is, and that's how we kind of keep score.
So for my volunteer purposes, I decided not to do anything that had to do with that close proximity, because I just know myself. I know what I can handle, and Shane and everybody at the ILF they totally got it. They understood that right away, which was nice. Yeah. Right? I didn't feel guilty for like, hey, I'll just talk about you a lot. How about that? And in, some creative ways with like the demos for donations, and, putting Chris in tutus and just different things. And, but like, I don't even talk to a lot of the folks that are in the pit part.
Right.
A lot. And I can't even imagine what level of amazing people they are, and the emotional strength that they have and character to do that kind of work. So what are some of the skill sets that the range of people, because I know there's a range of skill sets that they bring right to the team, which really helps out with just having different perspectives or gaining that traction in a different way that sometimes is surprising but beneficial, right? It works out really well. So can you talk about some of what the skill sets are for the folks that volunteer in the pit?
Oh, heck yeah. So let's start out. Let's define pit. It's the predator identification team. So
it really has like a name to it.
It does. Yeah, it actually means something. Now, Chris Hadnaggy insists that we call it mosh pit. If you know Chris, then that, of course, makes perfect sense in his mind. So he wants it to be called Mostly Open Source Hackers Predator Identification Team. But so it's just, pit. We can get it down to that, so everybody gets that. So the Predator Identification Team, it takes a very special type of person in order to be able to pull this off. So if you are going to work in the pit, what we are looking for just to start out with is a fundamental beginning. Yes, Mandy wanted armpit also, but no, we would not do that. Thank you for that comment, Mandy. So you are looking for a very special person, and we're looking for people who do OSINT, or open source intelligent work, at a professional level. And the latest requirement we're adding to that is that we also want you to have some dark web skill set and background behind you. So do you do OSINT work every day for your job? Are you highly skilled? Or do you consider yourself maybe a 7, 8, or 9 out of 10 in your OSINT capabilities? If so, that's the very first hurdle that we're looking for. We check for, it will take you about 90 days to onboard with us. And that onboarding process, so you're going to go through, first of all, an onboarding interview that is going to look for fit when it comes to the mission. So we were talking a little earlier, Will, about a vigilante mindset versus the mindset that the ILF has. We're two completely different things. I've literally had people tell me, yeah, I really want to help, and we start talking, we go through the interview, and they're like, yeah, if I found that guy lived around the corner, I just have to go beat his door in. Well, you just disqualified yourself. You can't, so we are looking for a mission fit. Are you in agreement with the way that we need to do things to make us sustainable with law enforcement in mind? Because if you're not, then it's not a good fit. The other thing is you're going to be known by federal law enforcement. And so, as you can imagine in our field, there's a lot of people who are very skilled at what they do, and that's a red flag for them. They're like, no, we're not willing to go there.
Yeah, they're like,
So,
no, that's good.
yeah, that's good. That's done.
I've been trying to stay off some lists. So
Right.
well, it worked out so well for me because I'd already been vetted, for volunteer work through the Infraguard and some different level clearances there.
Mm-hmm.
And the process with you guys was longer, more arduous. And like, I was like, are they going to find out that I stole that candy bar when I was sick? Like, I was worried.
That is kind of our specialty, is going in, digging into people. And so that's the other thing too. We tell you right up front, the background checks we're going to do are deep.
Yep.
We are going to be looking at your financials. We are going to be looking at all of these different things. And when we dive in, we really do. Because once you get into the pit, you're in a very tight circle of people who are just incredibly brilliant. And most of them don't want to be known publicly. And so it's, you have to be sure that you really qualify to be in there. So that's just the first interview though. After that, we're going to sit down and we're going to go through a technical interview. So yes, you're aligned with us, you're aligned with the mission, you're good with all the things that you have to be. You're going to let us do a background check. Now do you have the technical chops to actually pull off the job? And of course, do you have the availability? You may be the best person in the world, but if you got an hour a month, that's not really going to help us with getting a guy off the street, right? So let's say that you've got the technical chops. You're still not in, because now you have to sit with our therapist. Now you have to sit with our wellness professional. So we have to call it a wellness program. And the reason why is because the legal definition of therapy, you have to be in a room, and it has to be also therapists are licensed state by state. So we have a therapist on board, but we call it wellness. That's what it is legally. And so if you sit down with our wellness director and she says no for whatever reason, you don't come on board. I don't care how good you are technically, you don't come on board. And that applies for every single volunteer here. So you have to be willing to go to therapy monthly or quarterly, depending on your role. You also have to pass that initial wellness onboarding. And we're looking for two things. Should be obvious. The first thing is probably what everyone's thinking right now. Oh yeah, they want to be sure they don't get a bad guy in there, a bad actor in. And you better believe it. That's a no-go. However, the reality is what we're really looking for beyond that is, are we going to damage you by being part of the Innocent Lives Foundation? So if you're of that personality, that this is not a good fit for you, we're not going to let you in, and that's a protection to you. And so once all that's cleared and you get past those 3 interviews, then we finish the setup process for whatever position you're taking.
Well, absolutely. I mean, because when you think about it, and the stats and stuff better than I, you're dealing with a topic that has hurt so many and is so, can cause immediate rage, and properly so, right?
Yes.
And it hits on such a basic level that, and has screwed up so many people that, I've known some law enforcement officers, back in Galaxy a long time ago, far, far away, right? I used to work for a K-12 school district. And unfortunately, we had one of these predator types found his way into the CFO role.
Yeah.
And, I got a call saying, can you shut off this access right away? And yeah. And then we called in the sheriff's department and immediately got lessons on child pornography. Right.
Yeah.
Yep. And to have it hit that ugly, that close to home was very unsettling. And you probably uncover those rocks all over the place.
Mm-hmm. And that's really how, how the ILF got started. And so when Chris was in that type of a situation and he uncovered child pornography, and when that happened, it set off a whole series of events. And about the third or fourth time that happened, he said, wait a second, we can do something about this. And so I do want to bring something up, and the legal name is child pornography, but what we choose to call it is CSAM. And so child sexual abuse material.
Yeah.
So, and there's a couple of reasons why that we do that. One is that people have begun to associate the word pornography, many have, with entertainment. And so never under any circumstances would we ever want someone in their mind to connect the child with a form of entertainment in this type of situation. So it's just something we just don't want to do. And it's a verbiage change, but it has an impact the way you think and the things that you say. The other reason that we don't call it child pornography, even though that's the legal name, we use CSAM, so child sexual abuse material, is because that actually tells us what is happening. So if you think about it, every single photo, video, live stream where a child is being abused is a crime scene. And people usually don't think of it that way. There is a child being abused, it is a crime scene. And so when you begin to think of it that way, it tends to change people's outlook. It kind of catches them and they have to think about it differently. Now, to put that in perspective, in 2017 in the United States alone, there were 20.5 million pieces of CSAM reported. So videos, live stream, photos, things like that. 2018, it bounced up to 45.8 million. 2019, we're at like 64.5 million. It's escalating to an alarming degree. Some of it is better reporting, we know that, but we also know the types and the changes and the percentages that are new. So it's not the same people just reporting the same, or different people reporting the same image. These are unique. And often, I think last year, over 80% of them were new images. So it's a horrendous problem, and that's just in the United States. That's not the rest of the world. So just a thing to toss out there. If you find yourself thinking about or saying the word child pornography, in your mind, just flip it to CSAM, sexual child abuse material. We'll throw a little different angle on it for you internally.
Yeah, and that's got to be a major part of maintaining the health. Those elements that you do that are obviously triggers to change perspective and to change that for maintaining that health. Now, how do you come across things like, because I remember when we dealt with that situation, that if you see it, then you yourself fall into legal difficulties.
Yes.
How do you guys approach that kind of stuff?
That is a great question. And the reason why it's challenging, especially in the US, is because the law is written in such a way that if you have the intent to view, you become guilty. So how in the world do you legislate, or how do you go after and pursue someone over intent? It's got to be a huge, right? So we have to do several things. Part of that goes back to mindset and part of the rules that we have in place. One of those rules is that we must operate above reproach. So that means that there are a lot of legal lines here to cross, and we never want to cross any of those lines. The moment we do that, we jeopardize an entire case. It's the opportunity for law enforcement to lose a case they're pursuing and for this bad person to be back out on the street harming kids. So that's unacceptable. We have to do it above board. But to your point, you bring in an even like a tighter area, this intent thing. How do you stay out of that gray area? And so there's a lot of things that we do. An example is that in our virtual machines that we use in order to do our hunting work, we have a custom written tool called a blur tool. And whenever we're out on the internet, all the images are blurred. And we have a few key things that allow us to maybe open just a little section. So let's say, for example, that my video screenshot you're seeing right now, let's say that window is open. And there's a piece of material there. You can actually take an aperture and just open the section around the window and look out. Now, you may think, well, what could you learn from looking out a window? Well, if you're in the world of OSINT, there's a tremendous amount. You know, so but the interesting thing is that to stay above reproach with that, all of that is logged. And in fact, if you go to unblur even a portion of an image, we're actually recording the video of what's happening on your screen as the PIT member, so we can be sure that you're not doing anything you shouldn't be doing, and we can also prove to law enforcement that we're not breaking any laws. So we're going way above and beyond what we're aware of any other group is doing to be sure that we stay out of that area of reproach.
Oh my goodness. Because right away, right, IT professional, that means storage, that means CPU, that means, you know, costs.
Yes.
That are considerable. So, you know, if anybody's in a position to really help these folks or to connect them with some major dollars, please do so, because that's a lot to take into account just to be able to log that kind of stuff.
It is. And then it goes back to showing how important it is to have programs in place like the wellness program there too, because that sort of like that is some heavy mental work to just, you know, that's not something you can just autopilot, you know, oh, I'm looking for bad guys, whatever. No, this is like tedious, every click, every stroke of the keyboard, every movement, everything, right? Like there's a lot to consider in, you know, just every piece of what you're tracking down that is so tedious and very emotionally exhaustive. That
my heart went out to the law enforcement officers that were involved with this stuff, because this was before they had the blur tools and that kind of stuff. And so you're having to rake into the ugly elements of society in a big way. Now, the interesting part is that with some of the professionals that you have on board, right, if they are OSINT professionals, then they'll have everything from fake identities and that kind of stuff to be able to reach out to folks to trigger avenues to open up entities. How do you folks deal with that kind of element?
Oh, we don't. We flat out do not reach out and talk to these people whatsoever. So there is no communication between the PIT and the predator that we're hunting. It's not going to happen, because the moment you open up that communication channel, you are setting yourself up for a defeat inside of court. And so remember, our goal is, there's actually 2 points here I want to make. You're right, we do have tons of tools, but when we hand a case off to law enforcement must be able to duplicate our results. Therefore, if they have a tool, if we have a tool they don't have, they cannot come to the same conclusion. So while tools are good for theory, searching, investigating, we have to be able to prove this username is this person in a way that a law enforcement agency without our tools can go and find the same results. And that keeps us out of court, and it keeps law enforcement in court so they can actually do the pursuit and get the guy out of there.
Oh, geez, that's that makes the OSINT folks' job a whole lot harder. I mean,
Yes.
their hands are tied from normal methodologies of being able to make those connections, right?
Absolutely. Right. So here's the way I like to think about it. How do you feel when you get junk mail in your mailbox? It's like, yeah, really? Why? Why are you wasting my, really? So we have a lot of groups out there who are with good intention, and they're trying to turn things over to law enforcement, and they're trying to make a change. They try to get a guy off the street, but essentially what they're doing is they're spamming, or they're sending junk mail to law enforcement. They hand them all these leads that aren't really leads, and they just clog up their mailbox and they slow them down. Our job is to do all that work up front, save law enforcement time, hand them clear evidence on an identity and a pathway on how to agree to that identity, retain ownership of that chain of custody, and then be able to go and execute on it and get the guy out of the way. So some real differences in thought process between us and the other groups that are out there.
Yeah, so I think that answers Ben's question. So the work has to be done twice, kind of, right? Like the ILF and volunteers are doing like the heavy lifting end of it.
Right.
And then what's handed over is basically a map, right?
Yes.
Here's where we started. Here's every step along the way. So like how many steps are kind of usually included, right? Like
that's an open-ended question. It all depends.
Is it 3 steps? Is it 300? Is it?
Yes and yes.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So it depends. Is the guy that we're after really good at hiding? You're going to be 3, 4, 5, whatever it takes to get there. If the person is not so good at hiding, it may be 3 or 4 steps.
Yeah.
You know, but those, trust me, those don't happen very often.
No.
So yeah.
No, it's a very, think back to your technical writing lessons in college or high school or wherever you got to sit down and tell everybody how to make a peanut butter jelly sandwich, right? Like that's what I'm assuming this instruction file looks like is
yes.
Step 1, right? Take 2 breaths and put the knife in the peanut butter jar and spread on it, right? Like
yeah.
Very detailed so that they cannot misstep.
Well, and think too, many of the best persons in law enforcement are very good at what they do because they're very good with people. They're very good at finding that person, making those intuitive connections, but they're often not great with technology. See, right. So we're probably several years out yet before the next generation comes up where they are digital natives in this type of environment, and then they choose to go into law enforcement and apply their technical skill set along with their human skill set. But like me, I mean, what are we called at our age? Digital immigrants. Internet didn't exist when we were born, right? So we had to immigrate into this environment.
Yeah.
So, and right now, so we're in this time period where a lot of great law enforcement agencies and personnel just don't have the fundamental skill set needed for the technology today, and that's where we fit in.
Right. I think the separating block is what, this noise right here, if I can get it.
The telephone.
Wait.
Is that a fax?
No.
Yeah.
If you know what that sound is.
Yeah. Oh, that's not a fax. You're connecting via a modem out to the internet, right?
Yeah, I saw that. I saw that a bunch in some really fun little videos lately, where it's like, if you know what this sound is, right?
Yeah.
Some of us didn't even have that. Remember acoustic couplers?
Yeah.
Terminals.
Anyhow. Whenever you could sign on to log on to the internet, to the World Wide Web, and then go make a sandwich, and you had time to bathroom break while something loaded.
Yeah, Mandy, get off the phone. I want to use the computer. Exactly. That's exactly what it was.
Well,
the other thing too, there was no World Wide Web that we could access. You had to know the specific phone number to a bulletin board just so you could get on the guy's computer in order to pick a file off.
Yeah, the
whole,
message board and fun stuff.
Yeah.
I have a feeling I already know the answer to this, but what kind of reaction do you get from law enforcement?
It's mixed. So if you look at this from the perspective of law enforcement, they are used to these groups who are out there who are literally making their jobs harder. So part of what we have to do is develop our relationship with them so they understand that we are here and we are legit and we are here to make their lives easier. And so they typically have a lot of unlearning to do, because they'll get a tip off Facebook and there's this video out there where they've entrapped this guy and now they've gone out and met him at the Dairy Queen and there's a fight, and now all of a sudden they've got 10 times more paperwork than they had before. That's not us. So we have to undo all of that learned thinking and then get them to pay attention. Once they pay attention and then realize this is a good idea, then they have to say, okay, well, we'll try. And then once they like, okay, this is awesome, then they're all in. So we found that is the process. But by the way, there's also one other process we found. Once the guys on the ground are all in and they get it and they understand what we're doing, then we have to convince all their legal departments that we're legit also. So the whole process starts over again. So that's part of the battle, but that's also part of the reason why we've been able to get more cases as we've grown in our relationships with law enforcement, and as our reputation has grown. People are now, we're getting more and more agencies reaching out to us. We just had this happen 2 days ago, and it was literally, hey, we've been watching you guys. We've got this particular situation. We can't identify him. We would love an assist. And so that's happening more. The other thing is just the human challenge of that is a lot of these guys that are very good don't really love asking for help. And so we have to be very cautious about how we turn around and we approach law enforcement with it. Fortunately, we have a lot of good relationships already built.
I wanted to highlight some questions that are happening here.
Sure.
Daniel said that I'm in the process of developing these skills, and at a certain time, I feel like I'm ready to apply for the PIT. What is the best way to go about this?
Phenomenal question. So the answer is go to the page on our website that is called, hold on just a second, I will get it for you. It's the Get Involved page. And so that's get-involved at innocentlivesfoundation.org. If you go to the bottom of that page, you will see something that says volunteer. Click through that and then answer all the questions and you can apply. So with that said, we have to have a position open. And that position, we have to have a position that is able to be filled. Let me get that link for you.
Yeah, and I'll
right
share
now. Yep.
I'll share it across the several platforms.
There you go.
Thank you.
So you have to have the skills, you have to have the time, you have to apply. We have to go through that whole process that we talked about before. And on top of all of that, you'll likely end up on a waiting list so that we can then invite you at a later time. And the reason why is we have about close to 30 in the pit that are just focused on this work. Think about having to get another therapist. So in order to double that, another therapist, another pit coordinator, those are full-time jobs.
Huge.
Think about the expense involved in our AWS bill. So there's all these things that, we've grown to the point we're getting very effective. We want to do more, but if we want to scale this, so we've got it figured out, we've got the model built, we know it works, now we're ready to scale. The one thing we're missing to scale is just simply the funds. If we had an angel investor who turned around and said, hey, I know you guys need 500, 750 a year, 750,000 a year to scale. Here's another $1 million. What can we do? How many more bad guys can we get off the street? We can get a couple of those. We can start punching this model out and building. So,
I do want to get to a couple more questions, and I know we're over time. For those that are hanging out, it is 5 minutes after what we said we were going to close. but sometimes we go over. So if you've hung out with us before,
Sorry, guys.
And this is obviously going to be one of those times that we go over, but the recording link will be on YouTube after, and I'll share that in the event section of the Secure Nation LinkedIn page. Okay. One of the other questions that we had, Shane, sorry to cut you off and get here, but we had
You're good.
John Montgomery asked, do you work with any churches? And then just to kind of clarify on that, I know that some churches try to help with trafficking of people and stopping things like this from happening. And they try to help with the mental aspect from those that see it and to those that are victims of it.
So we will work with anyone who sends in a case request. And if it is something that we can help with, we want to help. So it doesn't matter the type of organization that you are. Where we have to be careful with that is our neutrality policy. We can't be seen as supporting one church over another or one political side over another. We are here to do one thing: get these bad guys off the street. We don't give a crap where they come from or what their ideologies are. We want them off the street, and we don't want them hurting kids. So yes, we're happy to work with churches. We're happy to educate, but we have to be careful about how we present, if that answer makes sense.
I think John may have been thinking more, like, just rereading his question a little bit, may have been thinking more like if a church wanted to provide some emotional support for the volunteers of the ILF, would that be something? John, correct me if I'm wrong, and I know there's a delay, but we can always come back to that. But I think that's more where we're going. Maybe I don't know. We'll get to the next question and see if John clarifies any more for us. Let's see. Christina Lemon asks, is there a way to contribute to the pit without being directly exposed to CSAM? Are there different teams, for example, the OSENT, involved in finding the predator after they have already been implicated?
Yeah, unfortunately, no. Those two things are joined at the hip. You're going to end up being connected to those things, and especially if you're doing the research work where you're trying to find viable leads for us, that is actually the darkest part of this. And so there's no real simple way to disconnect those two things.
Right. Let's see. Oh, we got LinkedIn user. I'll have to go to the tab to find out whose name. Good job for setting your privacy settings. I'm so proud of you. You guys make me so happy. Based on experience, what advice can Shane share with parents on how to protect their children or children around them? Oh, this is good, because look, we're going to have some more stuff. There's an InfraGard event that I'm helping to coordinate at the end of the month where Chris Hadnaghi will actually be joining us, and Ryan Cloutier from Security Studio. They have like an S2Me risk assessment. Anyway, it's called, you can find it on the Secure Nation events page, but I'm going to let Shane answer this question.
Go to that and hear Chris talk and hear him talk about the ILF. You definitely want to do that. I just dropped a link in.
It's coming.
And it is to a video called Knowledge for Parents. It's a 15-minute video that we produced that will help you understand as a parent some of the challenges you're going to face if you run into this. Additionally, the latest blog post that we just put up a couple of days ago at innocentlivesfoundation.org addresses that in a very thorough manner. It's called Staying Sharp as Parents and Talking to Children About Online Safety. And it is a long post. And so there's a lot of links and a lot of opportunity there for you to learn.
Yeah, you posted that. Awesome.
And from just the question was to my experience, it's fundamental. Developing conversation with your children, developing trust, having open conversations, and inviting your children into an environment where they are unafraid to approach you about anything. And that starts when they're young. If they're already older, it's not too late. But as a parent, you've got to open your heart, you've got to be willing, and you've got to work at it and talk to your kids. It's the most important thing you can do.
Definitely agree. It looks like John Montgomery followed up with his question about churches maybe being able to help support your causes, and says, yes, I think that's what he's saying yes to. I was right that he was talking more in a way that our churches that have these sort of like, emotional support groups within their organizations able to maybe volunteer those services to the ILF.
That is awesome. We have made a decision to be sure that we stay as neutral as policy. That's why we have the wellness program that's in place. Now, if you happen to have someone involved in your church who is licensed and they would consider volunteering their time as an individual, we would love to hear from them. It's kind of a different story, but we do have to be sure that we stay neutral and keep that separation.
In our organization, we have some incredible partners. And we had a situation where a girl was lured out of her house, basically, and dropped her cell phone. And from that information, within 48 hours, this group mobilized and was able to, through their connections, we caught the guy, basically. Do you do any of that kind of work as well?
We do when we're asked to. We have the skill set, as you can imagine. Some of the quality of the people in the pit, we almost, as you mentioned earlier, we almost tie their hands, right? We have all these rules we have to obey, and yet when law enforcement says, "Here, we're going to untie this hand. Here's where we need help," we can do a lot of things. So, but that's not the norm, and we have to be invited, and it has to be within the scope. So.
Right. John asks another question. Have you had any threats to the ILF because of the work that you're doing?
No, that is a great question. And so our operational security, we're super careful about it. Even as a volunteer, for example, so Rachel volunteers, as she mentioned, not in the pit, but she volunteers in education and outreach. So she gets to choose whether she's public or not. We really hold our people back in the pit from announcing that they are doing pit work. And so really the only people that would be in a position to be threatened would be like myself as a COO, or Samantha as a pit coordinator, Chris as the founder. Right. So we do everything we can to bring that target on our back to a minimum. And we've not really had an issue yet.
And that's part of the reason for that financial check, right?
Yeah.
Is that we make sure that the volunteers aren't susceptible to any sort of, extortion or we'll pay you this much, right? Like that. That's
right. And the other reason too, and this makes it very challenging, is that we will not attach our name to any case. So we've had some pretty big wins that we would love to tell you about. But the moment that happens, and those sites and those groups have been taken down and it becomes public, we just put a target on our back.
Yeah.
So we do not want credit for this, but that sure makes it harder to tell the story.
It does.
So the story, we've only told 3 stories since we've been open, and they're highly anonymized. You should never be able to hear one of our stories and be able to trace it back to the real events as far as persons and people involved. And that's a protection to us as an organization and individuals.
Yeah, but it makes it very difficult whenever you're trying to do any sort of, because I came on as like a fundraiser.
Yeah.
It makes it very challenging. So, and I know and the message is very heavy, right? It's a very heavy concept. And you don't, if you're anything like me and you understand your own emotional bandwidth, I think about what it is that we're doing up to a certain point, and then I have to compartmentalize and remove myself from how far that is.
Right.
So there are lots of lighthearted things that I like to promote and do with the ILF, just not to lessen the message, but more because it is such a heavy thing to think about. You want to know that you are helping, but to sit and stew on what it is that is really going on behind closed doors is hard. It's a hard emotional thought process to have. So
I see Ed's point up there. Neutrality is taking a position, and he's right. It is. It's an intentional position that we take to be sure, because the idea behind neutrality is not that we don't care. If we could solve the world's problems, we'd be doing it. I mean, that is absolutely, what we're after. So, but we know we can't. So what do we choose to focus on? We choose to focus on the things that we can have some sort of control over, and we do everything that we can to be sure we move that needle on those few things we can control. And for us, that is keeping ourselves in a position to get more of these guys off the street.
Yeah.
I hope that helps.
Yeah, no, that was great. So for Will's Center of Excellence, Shane, was he able to tell you? Because I had to go lock up dogs and make sure the kids were going to be happy for 30 minutes at least. But did Will go into what the IT Center of Excellence, kind of what their mission is?
Sorry.
No, I want to, right? Because if you are a budding, curious baby hacker, and you want to go find places to stretch your legs or test out your skills or anything else, Will and their concept of the IT Center of Excellence is a great place to do that. And places like ILF are wonderful places for once you earn that skill set and get there, is some place that you can really feel like you are definitely affecting somebody's life in a positive way. Hardcore. If you feel like your 9 to 5 is thankless and you just don't feel like you're contributing in any real way other than, woohoo, I saved some part of corporate America. Woo. Like this is affecting somebody's life. You want to talk, like, you're saying, like, you're, I don't know how else to, I lose words. So anyway, yeah, Will, with the IT Center of Excellence, you guys invite anybody to come in off the street in there and tinker around and try anything. And yeah, anyway, I'm sorry. I'll be quiet. You go, Will.
Well, the whole concept, once we can get past COVID, right, is that we have teamed up with an organization called the National Cyber Warfare Foundation in Arizona. It's better known as the Arizona Cyber Warfare Range, to where anyone can come in and learn how to hack. And just like Shane is kind of talking about, it's a safe environment, right? And where you learn not just the techniques, not just being able to put hands on and make it work, but you learn the ethics and you learn the legalities that are involved, right? And right next to it, we have our Center for Excellence, because we are a community college, and we have built a hands-on student-run data center. And we'll also have a CSOC, a Cyber Security Operations Center, that will have feeds brought in through the National Cyber Warfare Foundation, where we'll have international threat feeds coming in. Now, where this all comes into play is that this helps create skills and understanding if you're coming from ground zero, to where you can help prepare and get into a career. Now, that won't get you to the point where you can hit what she needs, but you're well on your way at that point in time. Okay, so I would highly encourage you that if this is the kind of thing that you want to get into, make sure you're getting someplace where you're getting hands-on, not just regurgitating knowledge, but you're putting yourself in a situation where you have to overcome the IT elements. And so we have our Center of Excellence, and then the Cyber Warfare Range, where you can go and break it, right? You have to have that experimentation aspect and concept, because those are the skills that folks like Shane needs, is that it thinks out of the box, and we have to change how we're doing stuff in all this education. And that's where you can learn the understanding and concepts of what Shane needs, of being able to isolate and do everything absolutely above board and keep everything to where you understand the needs of law enforcement to be able to keep their case solid and impenetrable so that they can do what needs to be done. And I just applaud you, Shane, and what you're doing is just absolutely phenomenal. And thank you so much for what you're doing.
It's literally an honor. And guys, I'm just running the business. We got all these other people that we've surrounded ourselves with, volunteers who are the guys that are just brilliant, and they're the ones that are just, they deserve that accolade, because these guys are taking their free time and they're doing this after they work and on the side. And it's a tremendous sacrifice.
Yeah, definitely agree. It is. It's a whole lot. I think we're about to have a tiny visitor, by the way.
I hear that. Hey, I just real fast, I want to just one more thing to add to what you said, Will. You nailed it. And it's that ability to do creative thinking. It's not just regurgitating what you learn in a course, because what's going to happen is these bad guys and gals out there are doing everything they can to stay a step or two ahead of us. And they are very creative. So you have to be able to take the principles and the concepts that you learn, reapply it, reinvent, and then go again. And so it's much more than just grabbing a cert. You need to be able to do the work.
Yeah, true IT is not being able to do what the book says. True IT is being hit with a problem and being able to, when you have no resources, how do you fix it and how do you solve that problem, right?
Correct.
Critically think and be able to apply the concepts that you've learned.
Yes.
And that comes into play in OSINT all over the place. You have to be creative and you have to be able to think differently and bring in those soft skills of, seeing what people think and being able to empathize to some degree.
And that's the key. Yeah. And that's why that wellness program is so important, because to your point, Will, you put yourself in the mindset of that predator. And that is a dangerous place to be. And so that's why we've got to be sure that we can help pull you back out and be sure you're getting the wellness that you need. Those
are some very powerful, very dangerous psychological elements.
Yes.
You don't want to fool around with that.
Right.
And that work hits with things in your mind that you can't unsee, that you can't it diseases. It's nasty. So yeah.
Yes. Yep. That's why we do it, to get that therapy in.
Well, Shane, I want to say thank you for coming and hanging out with us this morning. I shared the donation link for those that are not really wanting to maybe participate in the deeper levels of maybe pit work, or, just don't. We understand you don't have the bandwidth for all this. Sometimes I don't have the bandwidth for all this. Okay. Like, it happens. We get it. But feel free to check out the link. There's definitely some really good tips for parents on the site as well. And we're going to be bringing those things into focus at the InfraGard event later this month that SecureNation is helping to put together. And want to thank ILF's involvement in that so very much, as well as Ryan Cloutier with Security Studio. Any closing remarks? Anybody? No? Yes?
Thank you for giving us this platform to tell our story. It was awesome.
Are you kidding me? I talk about you all the time. I just hit a bunch of birds with a bunch of one stone. That's all that happened.
You folks are incredible. Thank you so much.
And y'all come hang out with us again next week. We do this weekly with Will and myself, and we are honored by the presence of professionals like Shane and the ILF. If you didn't catch it, last week we had Miss Gina on, and she sent me a cup that is so awesome. I actually cannot share it on, not the whole thing, but look, you guys, I got my, this way. This way. It's, it's not safe for work, but, and next week we're going to be having on a more personal friend of mine, specifically in my journey in the industry here. His name is Jerry Stewart. He's the CISO for Conway Corp, which is out of Conway, Arkansas, and was my very first client ever.
Wow.
Ever.
Nice.
I know. I'm so excited. So he's going to be hanging out with us next week. And the Cypher table, the women's table, is going to be next week as well on Friday in the afternoon. So all kinds of opportunities to come hang out all the time. I love hanging out with you guys. Thank you.
This was fun. Thanks.
Plus,
Thank you.
Coffee is life. So we'll see y'all again next week. And thank you again, Will and Shane and everybody for participating in the chat. Great questions. Loved it.
Questions.
Yeah, feel free to reach out to me or Shane or Mandy. Mandy was in the chat somewhere hanging out, or anybody else. Happy to help you guys. Y'all take it easy. Have a great weekend. We love you so much.